Hello and welcome. As always, I'm your host. My name is Kelly, and 2022 is over. Granted, this video is coming out 3 weeks late, but the fact that it's coming out at all means that I'm doing better than I was in 2022. So, to that, I drink. Probably shouldn't have downed that, but I didn't want to keep the whole prop up for the whole video. Probably shouldn't have put actual alcohol in it, because downing it kind of hurt. But a little bit of suffering is worth it because today we are talking about the best that we got last year. Now, full disclaimer, I didn't see everything, there's no way I could have. Also, I was a bit harsher on a lot of the critical darlings out there and a lot nicer to things that a lot of critics hated. So, this list probably won't look exactly like others. But this is what I felt was the best of last year, and if you have a different opinion, leave it down in the comments and we'll get some healthy discussion going. But without further ado, to start off my list as always, the honorable mentions. Green Lantern, Beware My Power. Normally I wouldn't put movies that are direct to DVD on my best list because I try to save those for just, movies in theaters. But there was one that was bad enough to make my worst list. Go check that out. So I feel that the good ones should get honorable mentions at the very least. Battle of the Super Sons. Genuinely, the writing on this one in particular was so goddamn good, it almost made my best list entirely. Seriously, check this one out. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This film handled the loss of Chadwick Boseman better than it had any right to, and the tribute to him alone earns it its spot here. Violent Night. The best Christmas movie I saw this last year, people, and it has Santa smashing in people's skulls with a sledgehammer. Weird. The Yankovic Story. How better to parody the biopic movie than to make a biopic movie about the number one parodist in the world? Now that we have the honorable mentions out of the way, let's start this video proper with number 10. Bullet Train. Remember how I said I was a lot nicer to films that a lot of critics didn't seem to care for? This is probably the prime example of them. And in truth, I'm not really sure why critics hated this movie so much. It's not as good as something that you would see from Quentin Tarantino or Guy Ritchie, but it's still made in that same vein, and it's done extremely well. The acting is superb from pretty much everybody involved. The humor is nonsensical while at the same time being completely logical. And the action and gore in this movie is spectacular. Yes, the film does rely on a lot of plot MacGuffins, things that are set up way early on, like, oh, did we forget about this? Only to come back later and usually save the day. But they're still established, and they at least use them in unique and fun ways, so why not? Brad Pitt shines inside this and carries almost the entire movie on his shoulders. Yes, there are other characters and plot lines, and a lot of them do come together later on, but it's Brad Pitt who's front and center, and he carries this movie. You can honestly barely tell this movie was even shot during COVID, unlike something like Blacklight, where you can tell that everybody's not even in the same room while filming. They just made this setting very, very cramped and made it so you don't have to pack it with extras to make it feel full and alive. Impressive technical filmmaking, a fun cast that's having fun making this film, great action, and a good sense of humor. That's all I need. Number 9. The Black Phone. This, in my opinion, was the best horror film that came out last year, and by God, did it scare the crap out of me. A kid gets kidnapped and is receiving help from the ghosts of past victims in the hopes that they might be able to save this one and maybe even give this killer his comeuppance. That is a very interesting prospect, and this could have easily fallen apart. We've been seeing this kind of trope a lot lately, harkening back to the 80s and 70s, these throwback films that are really just there to sell you on nostalgia. This one is not doing that. Yes, it does take place in the 70s, but you can definitely tell they went way out of their way to avoid the member berries that get sprinkled into other stuff. Instead, they just focus on what a kidnapping / murder in that day and age would look like. They didn't have the technology that we do now. They don't have all the resources available. Hell, the police are so desperate they rely on a psychic girl to give them visions of what may or may not have happened. And that's the thing. The psychic girl, the mystery, the killers, All of this is very Stephen King-esque, and that's not surprising because this film was based on a story written by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. And it really shows, not in the I'm trying to emulate my dad's work kind of way, but more of I'm inspired and doing my own twist on it. It's a nail-biting success where you can really tell that everyone involved worked hard to make this production as creepy and as intense as possible, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Number 8. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So you have a film where Nicolas Cage plays Nicolas Cage getting involved with a drug ring ran by Pedro Pascal. You have piqued my interest, movie. And you managed to keep my interest when it turned out to be the funniest thing I'd seen all year. Nicolas Cage has entered what I like to call the meme era of his life. And by that I mean, of course, the fact that we're not really watching movies to see Nicolas Cage give us a great performance. We're watching films to see if Nicolas Cage will give us a Nick Cage performance. So how to best to adapt that? Let's write a movie where Nicolas Cage has to make out with Nicolas Cage while grabbing Nicolas Cage's ass. That's how. In all seriousness, this film really does feel like it was tailor-made for Nick Cage, even though he and the filmmakers have said that he was just brought onto the project later. Because this film is really about an actor trying to kind of overgrow his own image, and even some of the more stereotypical things that happen in his movies. He's not a great dad. He wants to be, but he also wants to be a great actor, and those two sides tend to conflict with each other. In this film, you see a desperate man who is at his wit's end and potentially the end of his career, just trying to hold on to something semblancing a good thing. And it also includes Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage doing drugs, driving down the street, smiling and grinning, and also afraid that the killers are going to come and get them. This film manages to balance its drama and its comedy so well that it feels seamless, that it doesn't even seem like you're watching a film, more like you're watching just a series of events that may have happened to this actor. All the while, they're writing a film in the story that is literally just everything that's happening on screen, and you don't really catch that until about 2/3 of the way through the movie. I love subversive filmmaking like this, where it really does stretch the imagination in a lot of senses, but it's still just funny and action-packed in others. But what honestly sells this movie is its heart. Because at its core, it's about a guy trying to find the balance between himself and his ego and everything else that's important in his life. And I think we can all relate to that. Number 7. Nope. Good Lord, trying to record that little 2-second thing. Do I go nope? Or nope? Or nope? Or do I do what they do in the film, just like, nope? In my personal opinion, Jordan Peele is one of the best new writers and at least concept men that has really entered the horror sphere in a very long time. Now, I want to be careful and not heap too much praise on him because he doesn't have a perfect track record in my mind, but he always goes for broke, and I really do appreciate that. Get Out is a masterpiece, and in my opinion, probably one of the best films of the past decade. Us, unfortunately, is a very, very good Twilight episode that should have stayed in a Twilight episode, because unfortunately stretching it out for 2 hours kind of doomed the movie and raised so many plot holes. Nope brings it back into the Get Out territory, where you can definitely tell that there is a message and overall commentary, but you could just watch this film and be completely enamored by these people just trying to get a picture of something in the sky. This film is very simple on its surface, just a couple of people trying to figure out what that thing is up in the sky and get a picture of it, and hopefully sell that picture for a lot of money. And it's that simplistic story on the top that really helps emphasize the commentary this movie is trying to tell about people searching for clout in all the wrong places. But commentary aside, the film itself is spectacular. The filmmaking, the shots, the effects. I never thought that it would be possible to build tension from wibbly wobbly arm guys just falling dead on the ground. And in my opinion, the number one proof that this movie executed itself perfectly, it does not one, but 2 different title drops in the movie, and they're so seamlessly woven together that most people didn't even notice that's what he was doing. That takes talent, and I'm really glad that Jordan Peele is proving that even if not all of his films are hits, his hits are spectacular. Number 6. Babylon. Okay, first things first, you need to know about this film going into it that this film is an exploitation film. What do I mean by that? It's graphic, it's gory, it's intense, and it goes in some very uncomfortable places. You need to know that going into this film, because if you don't, you will probably be like most critics and audience people who did go see this and come out horrified. And in truth, I think that's probably one of the best things about this. Babylon is a dark and dirty film that does not give a crap about your good taste and will go anywhere and everywhere it pleases. This film follows three people as they transition from the silent era of filmmaking into the world of talkies and all of the trials and tribulations that go on thereafter. A lot of people have compared this movie to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or The Fabelmans, movies about old school filmmaking and how that was inspiring and how that moved over into new eras. And that is in this movie, but this is much more of the seedy underbrush. This shows a lot of the not so great things that happen in Hollywood to this day and even back then. There's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of sex parties, there's a lot of sleeping with people to get positions. Everything that you kind of know goes on behind the scenes, this film shows that. And it honestly leads to some of the funniest scenes I've seen in film, period. As an example, near the beginning of the movie, they show the filming of this big, epic, silent movie battle scene, and the extras are actually getting patched up off screen and just thrown back in there like they're in an actual battle, culminating with them stopping production when they find one of the extras dead from an impaled spear. And everyone's reaction? Well, he did drink. And then they just go on filming the movie. This film is bombastic, it is loud, it is hilarious, but that doesn't stop it from getting scary at times, especially near the end of this movie. It goes hard dark, like genuinely 8mm shit inside of it. It gets uncomfortable and scary. And you can genuinely tell that the studios didn't really care about this film because they threw it into the theaters during the worst possible time slot, basically the last weekend of the year, just so they could squeak it into the awards season, hoping that no one would actually watch it. But I'm telling you right now, it is worth a watch. You just need to know that it is that kind of exploitation movie going in before you see it, because if you don't, it probably won't resonate with you. But if you don't mind that kind of movie, you will have a blast. You will be laughing your ass off, you will be very uncomfortable, and you will be downright scared, all from a single film. Number 5. Everything Everywhere All at Once. The easiest way to describe this movie is Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness, done correctly. And that's coming from someone who actually liked The Multiverse of Madness. But unfortunately for Doctor Strange, this film shows its flaws in full detail. This film is extremely well written and extremely accessible for anybody who doesn't really have a firm grasp on multiverse type stories. That's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about big high concept superhero tales like this, because frankly speaking, we're comic book people. We kind of get and go along with things like the multiverse, but most general audiences aren't going to be as on board as we are and aren't going to understand how the rules work unless they're very clearly established and you stick to them. And this film establishes the rules of the multiverse and sticks with them and shows how limiting yourself in that capacity can lead to some amazing action sequences. Great fight scenes where you're using skills of a sign thrower to use a shield and block a bunch of attacks, or a sous chef to suddenly have amazing knife skills. And the acting from pretty much everyone on board just absolutely stellar. There was not a bad actor in this bunch. And I'm not going to lie, it was really nice seeing Short Run come back and finally hit film again. And he got a Golden Globe for it, I believe? Kudos, man. Probably the worst thing about this movie is the title, because Everything Everywhere All at Once is a very stupid, off-putting, let's be honest, A24 studio type title. But if the worst thing about your film is the title, I can see this film genuinely becoming one of the greats that's studied in film courses from here on out. Number 4. Jujutsu Kaisen 0. it wouldn't be one of my lists unless there was an anime film on there, and by far this was the best one I saw in theaters. But the fact that I can say that we're seeing more than one or two of these in theaters a year, anime may be coming mainstream quite soon. And if you're looking for a good jumping on point, this film is a great place to look. Jujutsu Kaisen came out in 2020 and is one of the new hot Shonen Jump shows that has got everybody talking. It only has one season going for it right now with about 25 episodes, which begs the question, how is there already a movie for it? Well, this movie is based on the prequel manga that came out before the original series. One of the things that Shonen Jump and other manga companies will do is they'll throw out a one-shot every now and then, just a self-contained story, just to give you an idea of what this world could potentially look like, and maybe transition that into an actual series. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 was that prequel story that greenlit the rest of the series for production. And in movie format, this looks amazing. It is stellar action, a great introduction to the world of exorcism and curses, and this does set the pieces really, really well for what we're going to be seeing soon in Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, which comes out this summer. But even if you don't want to get into the series, this movie is a great standalone project about a guy who witnessed something terrible, was cursed, and how he has to take that curse and change it into something that's actually helpful for everybody. And doesn't just leave a bunch of dead bodies, because there's a lot of dead bodies. This is a very, very graphic movie. I hope you don't mind seeing those school bullies folded up into little, square boxes and put inside of a cabinet, because they do that. But while they do stuff like that, they also have a talking, fighting panda that is probably the best character in the film. Just bar none, Panda is amazing. So much so, I've already got the merch, baby, because Panda is not a panda. That joke is only going to make sense to like 5 people who watch this. Also, speaking of merch, you might have noticed that Yuji Itadori here has joined my cast of figurines in the background. This Season 1 moment is awesome, so check out Jujutsu Kaisen, whether it be this movie or it be the original series. Number 3. The Northman. This film, in my opinion, takes the cake for most brutal film we got last year. This is probably one of the best Viking tales we've had told in a very long time. This film was carefully crafted to make sure that every detail of Norse mythology that they utilized inside this film was extremely accurate and extremely engaging. The action in this can sometimes look a little over choreographed, but is very well executed and extremely brutal. Axes actually dig into people's bodies. Swords cause mountains of blood just to burst from everything. But the core of the story aren't any of those guys. The core of this story is a much more Hamlet-esque tale of succession, of revenge, where the cause of potential kingdoms collapsing was because you killed the wrong person and left the wrong one alive. It's engaging. The acting is spectacular from everybody. Anya Taylor-Joy especially gets a shout out from me in this one, because I think this is the best film that she had last year. That's not to say that Skarsgård, the lead actor in the film, is a slouch, because god damn did he actually pull this movie off. This is a stunt-heavy film, and I don't really see many shots where they use the stunt double. That's how much effort he put into this. The only bad side about this film is nothing about the film itself, but unfortunately, when I went and saw it in theaters with my friend, a bunch of kids that were being dumbasses outside, which led to some very paranoid people more or less dragging everyone out of the theater because they thought there was an active shooter, which is a story I have to tell, and it is one that actually happened. Unfortunately, this movie will be mired by that event, and I will never get back those 10 minutes of the movie that I missed, trying to figure out what was going on. Number 2. The Batman. Raise your hands if you're a little tired of superhero films. Now put them down, because this is the film that reminds you that superhero films can be absolutely amazing. I had my doubts and reservations going into this film. Another Batman reboot so close to the last one. Didn't we just barely get another Batman and Affleck? Have they figured out what they're doing with that yet? Unfortunately, they did figure out what they're doing with that, and I understand the decision. I don't blame James Gunn, But man, do I feel bad for every single actor attached to the Snyderverse, because it still does come off like they got shafted. Thankfully, this film kind of proves that maybe having just standalone films and not a shared universe is probably the way to go. It does seem like the Batman films don't really have any more ground to tread when it comes to examining this character, but The Batman proved there is one aspect that often gets ignored. Batman's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, right? So what do they do with this film? Neo-noir detective story with a guy that dresses up like a bat. And they pretty much stick to that. This is basically Batman Does 7. It works so well, though. This film works way better than you thought that it would, given that kind of a premise, too. Gotham inside this feels like its own character. It feels alive. This city has a story, and it wants you to know what it is. But it's not just the setting of Gotham. Every single character inside of this is so well written and so much more deep than they usually are given in films like this. Probably the worst part of any Batman story are the mobs and gangs of Gotham. They are just so small time compared to the bigger supervillains. Probably the only one that's worth noting usually is Black Mask. And unfortunately, a lot of Batman productions, even the Nolan films, pretty much just treat them as afterthoughts. Falcone and Maroni are there, but they're not really the bad guys. They're a stepping stone to the bad guys. But inside of this film, they are very engaging. Over the course of this film, you can see just how much control Falcone really has and how many hands he's got in pots across the entire city of Gotham. And it's never unbelievable. This isn't just some kind of out there level of control that's, I control this city, I am everything. No, it is genuinely, you can see how this city got so goddamn corrupt and how he's able to have so much power. It is genuinely engaging having that kind of narrative going on while this whole Riddler story and who he's killing and why is just making everything so muddled. There is a genuine mystery here. We know who's doing it, but we don't know the why or even the how at times. And even having Batman maybe question whether or not he should let the Riddler do what he's doing is a very engaging way to take this character. In my personal opinion, this film is probably a very close number 2 in the ranking of all Batman films, just barely below The Dark Knight. And I will fully admit that's just because I tend to like police procedurals, which is essentially what The Dark Knight is. But the fact that we got this level of quality from movie 1 of a director new to this project with a cast that a lot of people weren't exactly happy about. Probably the funniest joke that I saw about this is that Edward Cullen was such a crap vampire that it took him 12 years to turn into a bat. But this film won us over despite all of that. That is proof of how good this movie is. Number 1. Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, you're probably not surprised that this is number 1. This has literally made everybody's best list that I've seen, and I watch a lot of people's best list. And honestly, it's not surprising. This film is one of the greatest return to forms that we've seen for summer blockbusters in years, maybe even decades. While I am a big superhero fan, I will say that unfortunately the superhero MCU experience has kind of ruined a lot of summer films because everything's got to be the same big superhero, portal in the sky crap, even when they're not trying to do superhero stories. Where are those classic era summer blockbusters? The ones that just have charm oozing out of their ears. They're not necessarily the best written things in the world, but you really get on board with the characters and the conflict that's going on. In comes Top Gun Maverick and Tom Cruise to prove that films can still be made like that, and they can be very profitable. As an avid film media collector, I hate this film because it took literally 9 months for them to come out with this on Blu-ray. It came to digital, but I'm not going to buy that. I want my physical DVD of it. And thankfully I was able to get it. Thank God. There are way too many things in this movie that make it great. The acting and the respecting of nostalgic characters and their legacies going forward into a different direction. Actors giving 110% for a film that, let's be honest, they probably could have sleptwalked through a little bit, but absolutely didn't, and they absolutely gave their best dramatic performances at times. To probably this movie's selling point, the actual dogfighting because they just put the actors in jets and said, hey, act in front of this camera as we spin you in the sky. Every single sequence inside of this is spectacular. It is action-packed. It is jaw-dropping. But bar none, the movie moment of the year, the number one thing I saw in any film I saw this year that has stuck with me since, is near the end of this film when they're in the final dogfight against these next-generation fighters. The next-generation fighter does something. I won't spoil what it is, but it does something. And you get the very, very realistic reaction, probably that wasn't in the script at all, from Miles Teller. What the fuck was that? That, bar none, is the movie moment of the year for me. It made me so happy that a character on screen literally had that thought that was going in my head and screamed it at the top of his lungs. It was so realistic. It was enjoyable. This movie is amazing. I can recommend anybody see this movie. It's action-packed. It's got great characters. It's got a great dynamic between Miles Teller and Tom Cruise inside of it. It's just a ball and a great return to form. I want more movies like this, and I hope that we get more movies like this. Unfortunately, I don't think many studios would put so many eggs in one basket. Even if Tom Cruise proved that it can work and be profitable, they're not going to take the risk, which is unfortunate, but reality. And that's it for my list. Did I miss any films? Did I put things too high on the list? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's get some healthy discussion going. And as always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, do all those things to make, channel numbers go bigger so that YouTube is happy with me. And yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time, hopefully with some more movie reviews for 2023.